In this video, we're going to introduce a new triangle congruency proof. In the previous videos, we've talked about side, 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 and hypotenuse leg. In this one, we're going to talk about side, angle, side. All right, so if two sides and the included angle, included means the angle in between the two congruent sides. So included is talking about in between the two congruent sides. All right, so if two sides and the included angle of one triangle are congruent to two sides and the included angle of the second triangle, that's enough to say that the triangles as a whole are congruent, that all the sides and all the angles, those corresponding sides and angles, match up. All right, so that's side, angle, side, and the order matters. The order matters. The order of what's congruent is important. Okay? So like in example 1, is this enough to prove that these are congruent using side, angle, side? All right, so we got one tick mark showing that DK is congruent to SK. We have two tick marks showing that AK is congruent to TK. And we have one angle swoop showing that angle DKA is congruent to angle SKT. And I had to be specific with that angle K because the vertex of K is talking about multiple angles. All right? And because I have these, and they're in the order of side, angle, side on both of these, side, angle, side. Yes, this is enough to prove that these are congruent using side, angle, side. And so for my congruency statement, I'd have triangle DKA congruent to triangle SKT. Again, the order of my congruency statement matters. The corresponding sides and the corresponding angles need to match up inside of my congruency statement. All right, so that order is very important. Let's do a formal proof where we're given some information and we've got our diagram. So I'm giving you these facts, that B is the midpoint of segment AE and that B is the midpoint of segment CD. All right, so since B is the midpoint of AE, what does that tell me? That tells me that it's cutting AE into two equal parts. So I can say that AB is congruent to segment AB is congruent to segment EB. Why? Well, that's the definition of a midpoint. Or, so a couple things you can say. You can say if I could spell, definition of midpoint. Or you could tell me that B is the midpoint of AA. B is the midpoint of AE. All right? Either of those reasons would work. So AB is congruent to EB. That gives me one of the sides. I've got a side length that's congruent in these two triangles because I'm trying to prove that triangle ABD. Here, let me make that highlighter smaller. Let's do that. That triangle ABD is congruent to triangle EBC. All right, so that's what we're trying to prove. So we've got one side length that matches up in those two triangles. All right, now let's use our next given. In our next given, we're saying that B is the midpoint of CD. So B also cuts this segment in half. Without that given, I could not assume that. All right, but because I'm telling you that B is the midpoint of CD, I can say that DB is congruent to CB. And that's because B is the midpoint of CD. All right, now what does that tell me between these two triangles? They have another side that is congruent. All right, so I've used all my givens. What else can I tell because of the diagram? All right, we also want to use the diagram to help us out. Well, notice what we've got here. We have vertical angles as my included angle here. All right, vertical angles. If we see vertical angles, we want to say that because that's telling me that two angles are congruent. So I've got angle, and order here is important. A, B, D, congruent to angle E, B, C. What's my reasoning? Vertical angles. All right, so that tells me that an angle between these two triangles is congruent. All right, now if I look at my diagram that I marked up, notice how it goes side, angle, side, matching up with side, angle, side. So I can prove that triangle ABD is congruent to triangle EBC. My corresponding parts match up. All right, and my reasoning for this is side, angle, side. Okay? Make sure to tune into the next video as we talk about the last couple triangle congruency proofs.